So picture this. You're driving down a busy commercial street. Maybe it's right at twilight. And out your window, you see this glowing, brightly lit strip mall.
Oh, yeah. We've all seen that.
Right. And there's this massive neon sign towering over the parking lot. Maybe it's advertising a casino or a diner or, a discount store.
Yeah.
When you look at that scene, what do you actually see?
Well, it's a polarizing image.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Do you see this ugly, chaotic eyesore of American sprawl? Or do you see incredibly valuable culture?
For most people, especially if they consider themselves fans of, like, good design, they instinctively say it's an eyesore. They look out the car window and just see visual noise.
Like it's tacky or something.
Exactly. Something tacky that needs to be bulldozed and replaced with something tasteful.
But today we're jumping into the life and work of someone who looked at that exact same neon sign, that same sprawling parking lot, and saw a pure architectural genius. We're talking about Denise Scott Brown.
A fascinating figure, truly.
And what's so compelling about the source material we're looking at today is how it paints her as this ultimate cultural translator.
That's the perfect way to describe her, honestly. She was able to look at the lowbrow elements of everyday human behavior, the roadside billboards, the parking lots, the messy vernacular of American sprawl, and she connected them to elite architectural theory.
Which is wild.
It really is. She didn't want to bulldoze the way people naturally lived. She actually wanted to understand the logic behind it and elevate it.
Right. And to really grasp how she managed to completely upend American architecture, we have to start with where she came from. Because, her perspective didn't just materialize out of thin air.
No, not at all.
She was born Denise Lukovsky in 1931, but she wasn't born in New York or Chicago or Paris.
Yeah.
She was born in Ankara, northern Rhodesia, which is now Kitwe, Zambia.
Right. And her family's background was entirely defined by this concept of profound migration.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Well, her parents were Jewish immigrants, and their families had fled from Eastern Europe, specifically Lithuania and Latvia.
Escaping the pogroms.
Right, exactly.
Oh.
Escaping the pogroms and the extreme economic hardship of Imperial Russia. They were seeking refuge in southern Africa. So from the very moment she was born, she was inheriting this heavy legacy of movement.
Right, and she was raised mostly in Johannesburg, South Africa from the age of 2. And reading through her early life and the sources, it feels like she was constantly in motion.
Always on the move.
Yeah. Her father was an entrepreneur. He did trading, stockbroking, film distribution. So she's growing up in this house just full of international visitors. She's soaking in the vast landscapes of southern Africa, observing religious and cultural traditions in a Jewish household, attending English language schools. She even had to travel back and forth to Europe during her childhood just so a sibling could receive medical treatment.
And you really have to imagine how that shapes a young mind. She was observing completely different ways of life before she was even a teenager.
Oh, absolutely.
And a really crucial detail here is her education at Kingsmead College in Johannesburg.
Okay. What was special about that?
It was an all-girls, liberal private school that actively opposed the racial restrictions and segregation policies of the period in South Africa.
Oh, wow. That has to leave a mark.
Oh, definitely.
Being in an environment that's actively criticizing systemic injustice, like teaching you to look at the physical and social walls that society puts up and question why they're even there.
Exactly. It trains you to be critical of the built environment.
And she knew she wanted to be an architect by the time she was 5 years old, which is crazy to me. She went to the University of the Witwatersrand, where she actually met her fellow architecture student, Robert Scott Brown.
Right.
But what I found really fascinating was that she participated in archaeological field expeditions in rural South Africa while she was there.
Yes. And archaeology is fundamentally the study of human residue.
Right.
When you're on a dig, you are literally uncovering the physical remnants of how ancient people moved, lived, and organized their space.
So she isn't just looking at buildings. She's studying the traces of human behavior.
Precisely. And this extreme mobility, this constant status as an outsider, whether in Africa or later in Europe and America, it became her greatest asset.
How so?
It prevented her from becoming dogmatic. When you're constantly crossing borders and observing different cultures, you learn to prioritize observation over imposition.
I see.
You don't walk into a new environment assuming you already know the right way things should be built.
Yeah.
You watch. You learn the local language, so to speak.
Right. You adapt.
Exactly. That global upbringing planted the seeds for her entire philosophy, which is basically you have to look at how people actually behave, not how you wish they behaved.
which is such a massive contrast to the architecture world at the time. She actually hit a huge wall in South Africa. She got involved in liberal politics, but grew incredibly frustrated because the architecture field there just simply wasn't accepting of women.
Yeah, the sexism was intense.
So leveraging that mobility, she packs up and moves to London in 1952. She works for a modernist architect, gets into the Architectural Association School of Architecture, and her partner, Robert Scott Brown, actually joins her there.
And they graduate in 1955.
Right. They get married and spend years traveling and studying across Europe.
And they were heavily focused on observing the history of the built environment. Like, they took this pivotal study trip to Italy with an architectural historian friend, analyzing how ancient cities were layered over time.
Fascinating.
Then, in 1958, they make the jump to the United States to study at the University of Pennsylvania's planning department.
But then, and this is just heartbreaking, an unimaginable tragedy strikes. The very next year, in 1959, Robert Scott Brown is killed in a car accident.
It's just devastating.
She is suddenly a widow in her 20s in a brand new country.
But she chooses to stay.
Yeah.
She channels everything into her work, completing her master's degree in city planning in 1960 and immediately becoming a faculty member at UPenn.
And it is right there, at the University of Pennsylvania, where her deeply observant outsider perspective collides head-on with the American architectural establishment.
Oh, big time.
Her entire philosophy was about preserving the spaces people actually use, which put her on a direct collision course with her own university.
Yes. So in 1960, the university was planning to demolish the Fisher Fine Arts Library.
Okay.
It was designed by Frank Furness, and at the time, the architectural elite considered it outdated, Victorian, and just plain ugly.
So Denise Scott Brown stands up in a legendary faculty meeting and argues fiercely against tearing it down.
She's defending the historical value of this eccentric building.
Right, and sitting in that meeting watching her do this is a young architect and fellow professor named Robert Venturi.
And that meeting sparks what would become one of the most famous collaborations in architectural history.
Yeah, they start teaching together, they marry in 1967, and she eventually becomes the principal in charge of planning at his firm.
But the moment that truly cemented their legacy happened the year before they got married. In 1966, Scott Brown invites Venturi to come with her to Las Vegas.
Okay, wait, I need you to convince me here. Because if I try to put myself in the shoes of a serious architect in the 1960s, this sounds completely absurd.
Oh, it was considered totally absurd.
I mean, when I think of capital A architecture, I think of the Taj Mahal. I think of the Pantheon, or sleek glass skyscrapers. If I look at a garish giant neon duck or a flashing casino sign, I just see a tacky advertisement. How did she possibly convince anyone that the Las Vegas Strip was worthy of serious architectural study?
Well, to understand why it was so shocking, you have to understand the enemy she was fighting, which was orthodox modernism.
Okay.
In the mid-20th century, the architectural elite worshipped a highly sterile, rigid style. They believed in massive concrete blocks, vast empty plazas, walls of unbroken glass.
Very austere.
Very. They wanted everything stripped of ornamentation. If a building had a decorative column or sign on it, it was considered a crime against pure design.
Oh.
Modernist architects sort of viewed themselves as gods, imposing these Right. They mapped the illumination of the signs. They studied the timing of traffic lights against the readability of the billboards. They were applying the same rigorous analysis to a casino parking lot that a historian would apply to the ruins of Rome.
That is wild. And this directly results in their seminal 1972 book, Learning from Las Vegas.
Yes. And in that book, they coined two opposing architectural terms that completely changed the industry: the duck and the decorated shed.
Okay, what is a duck exactly?
A duck is a building where the architectural form itself is the message.
Like literally?
Yeah, they named it after an actual building in Long Island that sold ducks, and the building itself was shaped like a giant two-story duck.
Oh.
The building is the symbol. Modernist monuments, in their own way, were all ducks. They relied entirely on their physical shape to make a statement, often prioritizing that shape over actual functionality.
And the alternative?
The decorated shed.
Yeah.
This is just a conventional, highly functional box of a building, but it has a massive applied sign or symbol placed on the front to communicate what it is to the people driving by.
Like a Target or a Walmart.
Exactly.
I mean, if you think about it, a Target is just a massive, featureless gray box.
Yeah.
If you took the sign down, it could be a warehouse, it could be an airplane hangar, it could be a gym.
Yeah.
The building itself tells you nothing. It relies 100% on that giant glowing red bullseye plastered on the front to tell your brain exactly what is inside.
That is the perfect example, and Scott Brown followed the book up with a brilliant 1973 essay called Learning from Pop. Her argument was an absolute rebuke to the architectural elite. She wasn't saying that every building in the world needed to be covered in neon.
Right.
She was saying that architects must stop turning up their noses at the vernacular. The visual language that ordinary people actually use and respond to. People drive cars. They need big signs to see where to turn.
It's like a classical musician, trained only in Beethoven, walking into a conservatory and demanding that everyone study fast food commercial jingles because that is what the public is actually humming.
That's a great way to put it. She argued that the postmodern era needed to embrace color, signage, and the messy reality of American sprawl, rather than fighting it with sterile concrete blocks.
But she wasn't just writing provocative essays about neon signs. She was a working planner.
Yes, she was.
She actually applied these theories to massive, real-world civic and campus projects. The sources outline the systematic approach she developed called the FFF Studios. FFF stands for Form, Forces, and Function. Can you walk me through how that actually worked in practice?
Well, it goes back to her viewing the city as a set of highly complex systems. When her firm took on a project, they didn't start by sketching a pretty building. First, they studied the forces.
The forces?
Yeah, the hidden social, economic, and cultural trends of an area, like where's the population moving, what are the traffic patterns.
Oh, okay.
Once you understand the forces, you determine the function, what the community actually needs the space to do, and only then do those two things dictate the form, or the physical shape of the building.
The example that really jumped out at me from the sources was her work on the campus plan for Bryn Mawr College.
Oh, that's a classic one.
Usually you'd expect an architect to just drop new buildings on a map wherever they look symmetrical and nice. But she meticulously studied how the students were already using the campus space before drawing a single line.
She was essentially looking for desire paths.
Desire paths. Like when you see a worn dirt trail cutting across a patch of grass in a park, because people don't want to walk all the way around on the paved sidewalk.
Exactly. People naturally find the most efficient route. A dogmatic architect would put up a fence to force people back onto the sidewalk.
Right.
Scott Brown's approach was essentially just pave the dirt trail. At Bryn Mawr, she watched where students naturally congregated, how they moved between classes, what landmarks they used to navigate. She built the campus around their existing behavior.
Which sounds exactly like user experience design, like UX design for a smartphone app, but applied to physical cities.
That is a brilliant comparison.
When you build a good app, you don't just build a pretty interface. You watch where the user's thumb naturally wants to go, and you build the buttons around that behavior. She was doing UX design for college campuses.
She truly was. And she did the same thing for the Berlin Tomorrow competition, where they heavily factored in the daily patterns of how the local population actually moved through the city.
There's also this fascinating example of their work on the Nikko Hotel and Spa Resort in Japan. How did she apply this philosophy there?
The Nikko Hotel is this brilliant synthesis of cultures. They merged Western notions of comfort in the guest rooms, using custom fabrics and wallpaper that reflected the scenery outside, with an exterior complex that mirrored traditional Japanese urban life.
Okay.
They styled the exterior after a traditional Japanese shopping street. And the mechanism they used to organize it was the hidden complex order found in historical kimono patterns.
Wait, how does a kimono pattern translate to a hotel blueprint?
Well, if you look at a traditional Japanese streetscape, to a Western eye, it can look chaotic and messy. But just like a traditional kimono pattern, which looks wildly decorative on the surface, there is actually a strict, functional, geometric logic underneath governing the rhythm of the design.
Oh, wow.
She mapped that underlying rhythm and used it to structure the hotel's exterior, so it felt authentically vibrant and local rather than imposing a sterile Western grid on a Japanese landscape.
So her entire approach fundamentally humbled the role of the architect. Instead of the star architect acting like a god, imposing a perfect vision from above, she dictates that the architect is a servant to the user. You design for the thumb. You design for the human being.
Precisely, which makes the next chapter of her life so deeply frustrating.
Right, because you would think that with this massive influence, creating this groundbreaking UX-style approach to cities, and clearly acting as an equal partner in her firm, she would be universally celebrated by her peers.
You'd think so.
But the architectural establishment still tried to completely erase her contributions simply because she was a woman.
The systemic sexism she faced was staggering, and it was deeply entrenched in the culture of the profession.
It's awful.
In 1989, she published a now-famous essay titled Room at the Top: Sexism and the Star System in Architecture. It detailed her exhausting struggle to be recognized as an equal partner in a world completely obsessed with the myth of the male lone genius.
And the detail that is just incredibly sobering is that she actually wrote that essay in 1975. But she held it back. She waited 14 years to publish it.
Because she was terrified.
Yeah.
She knew that speaking out about the sexism she was experiencing on a daily basis could destroy her career and cost their firm commissions. And her fears about how the establishment viewed her were completely justified, as we saw it with the infamous Pritzker Architecture Prize controversy.
The Pritzker is essentially the Nobel Prize of Architecture. And in 1991, the prize was awarded to Robert Venturi, just Venturi.
Yep.
Denise Scott Brown was entirely excluded, despite the fact that they had been partners for decades and had literally co-authored the very theories that the prize was celebrating.
It was a glaring erasure. Just unbelievable.
She refused to attend the awards ceremony in protest, which is completely understandable. But the excuse the prize organization, the Hyatt Foundation, gave was just absurd.
Oh, it was ridiculous.
They claimed that, at the time, their rules dictated they could only honor individual architects, not partnerships. But the sources explicitly point out that they had literally given the award to 2 recipients just 3 years earlier in 1988.
The hypocrisy was undeniable. But what is truly remarkable is how she handled that exclusion.
How so?
Her refusal to attend and her writing of that essay serve as a masterclass in the very observation skills she used in her work.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Just as she observed the hidden economic and social forces shaping a city layout, she observed and mapped the hidden systemic forces of sexism shaping the so-called star system of her own profession. She called out the bias with the same analytical precision she used to study Las Vegas.
I'm just struck by the bitter irony of it all. The architectural establishment initially hated her ideas about pop culture and the vernacular. Then, over a couple of decades, they slowly realized she was right and embraced those exact ideas.
Right.
And then, once the ideas were considered prestigious, they handed the ultimate credit to her husband.
It raises a profound question about how history records collaborative genius and who traditionally gets to hold the pen. But the story doesn't end in 1991. The culture eventually did start to catch up with her.
Yes, jump forward to 2013. A student group at the Harvard Graduate School of Design called Women in Design started a petition demanding that Scott Brown receive joint recognition for the Pritzker Prize.
Such a great initiative.
And it went completely viral in the architecture world. They gathered 20,000 signatures globally.
Now, she never got the Pritzker retroactively. The foundation refused to amend the 1991 award.
Which is a shame.
It is. But in 2017, she did win the prestigious Jane Drew Prize, which recognizes women who have raised the profile of women in architecture.
And her quote about winning that prize is so moving. She referred back to the Harvard petition, saying, "I was very touched by the Pritzker petition, and that is my prize in the end." 20,000 people wrote from all over the world, and every one of them called me Denise.
That is the ultimate validation, isn't it?
Truly.
Not a medal from a secretive, biased foundation committee, but recognition from 20,000 peers, students, and users of the built environment who saw her, recognized her forces and functions, and demanded she be given her rightful place in history.
It is an incredible journey, from a childhood defined by global migration across Africa and Europe, which trained her eye to truly observe how humans live, to finding profound architectural inspiration in the neon glow of a Las Vegas casino, to fighting a deeply entrenched patriarchy for her rightful place.
She changed everything.
Denise Scott Brown taught us to look closer at the things we usually dismiss. So the next time you walk through a thoughtfully laid-out college campus, where the pathways just seem to magically align with exactly where you want to walk, or the next time you drive past a big gray box strip mall relying on a giant glowing sign to tell you what's inside, remember, you are experiencing the built environment through the lens Denise Scott Brown fought to legitimize.
And if we can pull those concepts into the present moment, I want to leave you with thought about how we live today.
Okay, let's hear it.
If physical buildings can be understood as decorated sheds, meaning Basic functional structures that rely entirely on applied symbols and signage to communicate their identity to the passing world. How does that apply to our digital lives?
Oh, that is an interesting pivot.
Think about it. Aren't our social media profiles the ultimate decorated sheds?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
We are all logging into the exact same functional, blank, sterile templates provided by these massive tech companies. The structure is identical for everyone.
Right, the gray box.
Exactly. But we apply our own digital neon signage, our profile photos, our carefully crafted bios, our curated aesthetics. We use all that to signal our identity to everyone scrolling past on the digital highway. We are using her architectural theories every single time we log on.
You're driving down that digital street right now. Look at your own profile. Is the sign you are broadcasting to the world an eyesore, or is it culture? Something to think about.